child, I want you to know something before we go any further. I saw you. Not the version of you that you showed everyone else. Not the steady voice, the reassuring smile, the nod that said, "I'm fine," when something entirely different was living underneath those words. I saw what was behind all of that. I saw what you were carrying when no one else was in the room. And I need you to hear this gently, the way it was always meant to reach you. You were never as hidden as you thought you were. There is something quietly exhausting about pretending to be okay. Most people don't talk about that part. They talk about the struggle itself, the grief, the worry, the weight, but they rarely speak about the second weight, the one that comes from managing how you appear while you're holding the first one. That is its own kind of tired, and you have known that kind of tired for longer than you've admitted to yourself. I watched you learn it, the way you measured your words before speaking them, the way you softened your face before walking into a room, the way you answered, "I'm good," so naturally, so quickly, that after a while, even you weren't entirely sure what the true answer was anymore. That is not weakness. That is what someone does when they love the people around them and don't want to become a burden to them. That is what someone does when they've spent enough time sensing, rightly or wrongly, that their pain might be too much for others to hold. You weren't being dishonest. You were being careful. And there is something in that carefulness that I understand more deeply than you know. But here is what I want to gently place in front of you right now. The pretending, I saw it. Every single quiet moment of it. Not from a distance, not as someone observing from above with a clipboard of your failures and shortcomings. I saw it the way someone sees a person they love deeply, sitting alone in a room, holding something heavy, and choosing not to call out for help. I saw it and I did not look away. I did not grow impatient with you. I did not think less of you for it. I simply stayed, because that is what I do, and that is what I have always done. Even in the seasons when you could not feel me there, there is something that happens inside a person when they carry hidden weight for a long time. Something quiet shifts. The smile becomes a little faster. The reassurances become a little more automatic. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, somewhere underneath the performance of okayness, a part of you began to wonder if anyone would ever really see through it, if anyone would ever come close enough, if anyone would ever notice what was actually happening in the quieter places of your heart. My beloved, I am here to tell you, I noticed. I have always noticed. And what I found there, in those quiet places, was not something that disappointed me. What I found there was someone who had been trying, with everything they had, to stay standing. Someone who had been loving others even while running low themselves. Someone who had been faithful in ways that never made it into any conversation, that no one thought to ask about, that existed only between you and the long hours of your own private struggle. I saw all of it, and I have not forgotten a single moment of it. Not a single moment of what you carried quietly, what you held back, what you whispered only in the dark when you were certain no one could hear. I was there in those moments too. I want you to sit with that for just a breath, not to analyze it, not to immediately turn it into a lesson or a resolution, just to let it settle somewhere real inside of you, because I think part of you has been waiting a long time to hear it. There were nights, and you know the ones I mean, when the house was quiet and everyone else had moved on with their evening, and you sat with something you couldn't name. Not quite sadness, not quite fear. Something in between. Something that didn't have a clean word attached to it. So you never tried to explain it to anyone. You just sat with it. And eventually, you moved on too. Because that is what you do. That is what you have always done. But I was in that quiet with you. I saw the way your eyes held something in the middle of conversations that were supposed to be light. The way you laughed at the right moments and asked the right questions and kept everything moving. Because keeping things moving felt safer than letting anything slow down long enough to be examined. I have watched many hearts learn to live this way. The rhythm of it becomes so familiar that it stops feeling like pretending and starts feeling like simply who you are. And that is perhaps the saddest part of a long-carried weight. Not that you hid it, but that after long enough, you forgot there was anything being hidden at all. There were smiles that cost you more than anyone knew. There were mornings you assembled yourself before stepping out of the room, before facing the day, before becoming the version of you that the world needed to see. And no one asked what that assembly cost. No one thought to look behind the composure and ask what was actually living there. I looked. I have always looked. Not searching for failures, not cataloging the moments you came undone in private. I looked the way someone looks at a person they love, wanting to understand, wanting to be close, wanting you to know that the fullness of you is not too much. It was never too much. You know, there is something tender about the fact that you are here right now. Something that matters more than you might realize. In the middle of whatever this day holds, whatever weight came with you into this moment, you found your way to a place of quiet. And I want you to know, if you found something real here, something that feels like it reached a part of you that doesn't often get reached, you are welcome to let others know this space exists. A like, a comment, a subscription. Those small gestures simply help this quiet voice find other hearts who are sitting alone somewhere, holding something they haven't told anyone. Some even choose to support this space through super thanks, and that generosity, whenever it comes, is received with deep gratitude. But whatever you choose, your being here matters. Your presence in this moment is not small, and I want to continue speaking to you, because what I saw in those silent moments, in the forced smiles, in the swallowed words, in the evenings you held everything in, was not someone failing. What I saw was someone who loved deeply enough to protect others from their own pain. Someone who believed somewhere underneath it all that being needed meant staying strong, that being loved meant remaining manageable. My child, I want to gently stay with that thought a little longer, because there is something important living inside of it. Something about why you learned to carry things the way you did. Something about where that belief came from and how long you have been living inside of it without ever stopping to question whether it was true. Because here is what I want to say to you slowly and carefully. The strength you showed was real. I am not dismissing it. What you carried with a kind of quiet faithfulness that I witnessed and that I honored. But there is a difference between strength that comes from a place of wholeness and strength that comes from a place of fear. And for a long time, beloved, yours came from the second place more than the first. You were afraid of what would happen if you let it show. Not afraid in a dramatic way, not trembling, not panicking. Just quietly, steadily afraid, the way a person can be afraid for so long that the fear becomes background noise, something they stop hearing because it has simply always been there. You were afraid that if people saw what you were actually holding, something would shift, that the way they looked at you would change, that the role you had quietly taken on, the steady one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't fall apart, would be renegotiated in ways you couldn't predict or control. And so you kept the brave face on. You kept it on in conversations that brushed close to the truth. You kept it on when someone asked, "Are you okay?" and meant it casually, and you answered casually, because a real answer felt like too much to place in a casual moment. You kept it on in rooms full of people who cared about you, because caring about someone and being able to hold the full weight of them are two different things. And you knew that. You have always known that. That knowing is its own kind of loneliness. There is something I have seen in hearts like yours. And I say like yours because you are not the first to walk this road, and you will not be the last. There is a particular exhaustion that comes not from the struggle itself, but from the management of appearances around the struggle. from the energy spent making sure no one worries too much, from the quiet work of being okay enough, present enough, functional enough, that the people who love you don't have to carry concern for you on top of everything they are already carrying themselves. You thought you were protecting them, and in a way, you were. That impulse came from love. I want you to hear that clearly. It came from love and from care and from a deep sensitivity to the weight others carry. But my child, and I say this gently, the way you would want someone to say something important to you. In protecting them, you left yourself very alone in a room that was never meant to hold only one person. You were not designed to carry this without being held. No one is. And yet so many do for so long that they begin to believe the carrying alone is simply their nature, that this is just who they are, that needing to be held is something for other people, softer people perhaps, or people whose faith isn't as settled, or people who haven't learned yet what you have learned. But that is not wisdom speaking. That is weariness speaking. And weariness, when it has been present long enough, begins to sound remarkably like wisdom. It begins to dress itself in phrases like, "I'm used to it, and I don't want to be a burden, and I've made it this far." And those phrases feel true because they have been repeated quietly for so long. But underneath them, underneath the practiced composure and the brave face and the smile that arrives just a little too quickly, there is something still waiting, something that has not yet been put down, something that has been held in place by effort and love and sheer will, and that is tired in a way that sleep does not fully touch. You know what I mean by that kind of tired. It is not a tired that a good night's rest resolves. It is the tired that lives in a deeper place, the tired that comes from being strong in the spaces where you most needed someone else to be strong for you. And I want you to hear me say this now, quietly and without condition. You never had to be strong with me. Not once. Not for a single moment of all the time we have known each other. There was never a version of you that I needed you to assemble before coming to me. There was never a presentation I was waiting for. There was never a level of composure required before I would lean in and listen. You could have come undone completely, voice breaking, words failing, nothing making sense. And I would have stayed exactly where I was. I would not have shifted. I think somewhere along the way, without meaning to, you began to treat me the way you treated everyone else. You brought me the managed version, the version that had already sorted through the worst of it and arrived with something coherent to say. And I understand why. The habit had become so natural by then, the instinct to compose before presenting, that it carried itself even into the quiet moments between us. But my beloved, I am not everyone else. I am not waiting for you to make sense of it first. I am not quietly hoping you'll arrive with your emotions in some kind of order that makes it easier for me to respond. I have never needed you to protect me from the weight of what you're carrying. I have never been too tired for it. I have never checked the hour and wondered if it was a good time. Every moment you turned toward me was a good moment. Every broken, incomplete, half-formed reaching in my direction was received. Fully, tenderly, without reservation. You did not have to be strong with me. You only thought you did. And that thought, that quiet, persistent, deeply embedded thought, may be one of the heaviest things you have carried. Without realizing you were carrying it. The belief that even in my presence, you needed to hold yourself together. That even here there was a standard to meet. That love, even mine, had a threshold you needed to stay on the right side of. There is no threshold. There never was. And I want that to land somewhere real in you today, not just pass through as a pleasant idea. I want it to reach the place where the belief originally took root, that quiet interior room where you decided, at some point, that being fully known meant risking being fully rejected, that if someone saw all of it, really all of it, they might decide you were more than they had signed on for. I signed on for all of it, every unresolved corner, every contradicting emotion, every moment of doubt that arrived wearing the face of faith, every prayer that felt more like exhaustion than conversation, every time you came to me out of desperation rather than devotion and felt vaguely ashamed of the difference. I was not measuring the quality of your reaching. I was simply glad you reached. That is all I have ever asked of you. And there is something I want to gently place beside that truth. Some hearts, when they feel something this real, feel moved to respond in some way, to do something with what they're feeling rather than simply let it pass. If that is you right now, if something in this moment has reached a place that doesn't often get reached, some choose to express that through super thanks, a quiet way of saying this mattered to me, not because it is expected, not because it is owed, simply because generosity, for some, is how they hold something they don't yet have words for. Whatever you feel in this moment, I see it. Because here is what I want you to understand about the brave face you wore for so long. It was never a lie exactly. It was more like a translation error. You were trying to communicate something true, that you were still present, still trying, still holding on. But the words you chose left out the most important part. The part that said, and it is costing me something. The part that said, I am here, but I am also barely here. The part that said, I need someone to notice without me having to ask. I noticed. I have always noticed. And not with the kind of noticing that simply files information away, with the kind of noticing that leans in, that stays, that does not grow weary of a struggle just because the struggle is taking longer than expected. I have seen many hearts carry this particular weight, the weight of being the one who stays composed so that others can feel safe. And I have sat with every one of them in the hidden moments when the composure quietly slipped. And I want to speak to that slipping now, not to the moments you held it together. You have already carried those with more dignity than you gave yourself credit for. I want to speak to the other moments, the ones that happened in private, the ones that left no witnesses, the tears you never let fall, or the ones you let fall only when you were absolutely certain no one could see. In the car, maybe, with the music turned up enough to feel like cover. In the shower, where water and grief have always found a way to coexist without explanation. In the middle of the night, in that particular darkness that feels different from all other darkness. Heavier, more honest, less willing to pretend along with you. I was in every one of those moments. There is something I want you to understand about the grief you held back. Every time you swallowed something that needed to come out. Every time you blinked it away or breathed through it or redirected yourself before it could fully surface. That took effort, real effort, the kind that doesn't get counted anywhere, the kind that no one applauds because no one knew it was happening. You were doing invisible emotional labor in plain sight, and the people around you experienced only the result of it. The steadiness, the warmth, the sense that you were okay. They didn't see the work behind it, but I did. And I want you to know that what you held back did not disappear. Emotion does not simply dissolve because it is suppressed. It waits. It sits quietly in the body, in the chest, in the tight place behind the eyes, and it waits with remarkable patience for a moment when it might finally be safe enough to be felt. Some of what you are carrying right now is not new. Some of it has been waiting for a very long time, for exactly this, for a space that felt quiet enough, safe enough, honest enough to finally allow it to surface. This is that space, and I am not asking you to perform grief any more than I asked you to perform strength. I am not waiting for tears as proof of sincerity. I am simply telling you what you held back was seen, what you silenced was heard. The cry that never left your throat still reached me, the words you swallowed in the middle of conversations that came too close. I heard the shape of them even when they never became sound. Nothing that lived inside you was ever truly mute to me. There were moments, I know, when you told yourself that you were fine because the alternative felt too large. Because if you started, you weren't sure you could stop. Because breaking down in the middle of an ordinary day felt like a luxury you couldn't afford, or a vulnerability you couldn't risk, or simply something that would require more explanation than you had energy to give. And so you held the line, again, the way you have held it so many times before. And the holding cost you something. It always does. Not in a way that made you weaker. I want to be careful here because that is not what I am saying. But in a way that accumulated quietly, layer over layer over layer, each one thin enough to seem manageable on its own, until the total weight of them became something you simply lived inside of without fully recognizing it as weight anymore. You adjusted to it. You built your daily life around it. You learned to move carefully in ways that kept it from shifting. That is not living freely, my child. That is surviving around something that was always meant to be released. And the releasing, I know this. The releasing feels frightening from the inside. Because if you let yourself feel it, really feel it, you don't know yet what will be left when it passes. You don't know who you are without the management of it. The brave face has been on for so long that you are not entirely sure what the face beneath it looks like anymore. But I know. I have always known. And what I see beneath the composure, beneath the held-back tears and the swallowed words, and the careful management of how much of yourself you allow to show, what I see there is not damage. What I see is someone who is more whole than they realize. Someone whose depth of feeling, the very depth that made all of this so hard to carry, is also the depth from which something beautiful is still capable of growing. And I want to stay with that for a moment. Not move past it too quickly, because I think you have spent so long focused on managing what you feel that you have forgotten what it points to. The sensitivity that made all of this so difficult. The way things land deeply in you, the way you feel the weight of others alongside your own, the way you notice things that most people walk past without registering. That is not a flaw in your design. That is the design. And I have been holding you within it, closer than you realized, through every season of it, through the seasons when the weight felt manageable and through the seasons when it did not, through the times you came to me with something coherent, and through the times you came with nothing at all, just a kind of interior exhaustion that didn't have language yet. I was not more present in one than the other. I was not closer when you were doing well and further when you were struggling. I do not work that way. There is a thought that moves quietly through hearts like yours, and you may recognize it when I name it. The thought that says, my presence in your life is somehow proportional to your spiritual condition, that when you are faithful and steady and showing up well, I am near. And when you are depleted and doubting and barely holding on, there is distance, a gap that your struggle has created. That thought is not true, but I understand why it formed, because human love, even at its most sincere, often works something like that. People lean in when you are doing well. They grow uncertain when you are falling apart. They don't always know how to stay close to someone in the middle of something they can't fix. And so over time, without anyone intending it, you learn to associate being loved with being okay. You learned that okayness kept people near, and you carried that assumption into your understanding of me. My child, I want to gently set the record straight. My closeness to you has never been a response to your performance. It has never fluctuated based on the quality of your faith on a given morning, or the steadiness of your composure on a given afternoon, or whether the week felt like one of trust or one of quiet desperation. I was present in the desperation the same way I was present in the trust. I was beside you in the falling apart the same way I was beside you in the holding together. You were never less held because you were struggling. If anything, and I want you to hear this carefully, in the moments when you were most undone, I was most attentive. Not because I love you more in your weakness than in your strength, but because in those moments the layers were thinner. The composure had slipped just enough that something real was closer to the surface. And I have always been drawn to what is real in you. Not the managed version, not the assembled presentation, the real, unguarded, unpolished you. That is the one I have been holding. Through the long nights and the forced mornings and the quiet afternoons, when you sat with something you couldn't name and didn't try to. Through the prayers that felt hollow and the silences that felt like absence, and the moments you wondered in the back of a thought you didn't quite let finish, whether any of this was real at all. I was there in every one of those moments, and I am here now. I want you to let that settle without rushing past it. Not as a phrase you've heard before, not as something you nod at and file away, but as something that is actually, quietly, true right now in this moment. I am here, not arriving, not returning after an absence. Here, the same presence that has been with you through everything you just remembered while listening to this. The same presence that saw the pretending and did not pull away. The same presence that sat with you in the silences you thought were empty. They were never empty. And I want to speak now to the part of you that is still waiting for permission. The part that has heard all of this and felt something stir, but is still standing just outside the door of it, uncertain whether it is safe to fully enter, whether it is safe to actually believe that you are this known, this held, this seen, not despite the struggle, but within it. It is safe. You do not have to earn your way into this. You do not have to resolve anything first. You do not have to arrive at a better version of your faith before what I am saying can be true for you. It is already true. It has been true through every season you questioned it. It remained true in the moments you couldn't feel it. The feeling was never the thing that made it real. I was always real. And the you that I have been present with, the full, unmanaged, sometimes exhausted, sometimes doubting, always trying you, that is the one I am speaking to right now. Not a future version of you that has healed more completely. Not a past version of you when things felt steadier. This version, right here, right now, carrying whatever came with you into this moment. You don't have to pretend anymore, not with me, not today. Not in the quiet that exists between these words and wherever you are sitting right now. You are allowed to simply be what you are. Tired if you're tired, uncertain if you're uncertain, relieved maybe if something in this has reached a place that needed reaching. Whatever is true for you in this moment, it is welcome here. I am not waiting for you to be different before I draw close. I am already close. And I want you to carry that with you when this ends. Not as a memory of something that felt good for a few minutes, but as something that reshapes the way you move through what comes next. The next ordinary morning. The next room full of people where the habit of composure kicks in before you've had a chance to think about it. The next moment when someone asks, "How are you?" and the automatic answer rises quickly to your lips. In that moment, you don't have to perform for me. You can carry the quiet knowledge that somewhere beneath whatever face the day requires, there is a place that has been seen, known, held, and that place is not a problem to be solved. It is not a wound that disqualifies you. It is not evidence that something is fundamentally broken in you. It is simply the interior of a person who has been carrying something real in a world that doesn't always make room for real things, and who is loved completely, steadily, without revision, by the one who made that interior and has never once found it to be too much. You are not too much. You were never too much. And the pretending, all of it, every layer of it, every smile that cost more than it appeared to, every carefully managed moment, none of it changed what I see when I look at you. What I see has always been the same. Someone worth staying close to. Someone worth speaking to. Someone worth every quiet moment of this conversation, And now gently, I want to acknowledge something. If something here reached you today, if a part of you felt seen in a way it doesn't often feel seen, and if you feel moved to respond to that in some way, some hearts choose to express their gratitude through super thanks. It is never something I would ask of you, and there is no weight attached to it. But if generosity is how you hold a moment that mattered, that quiet offering is received with genuine thankfulness. And if words feel closer to what you're carrying right now, leave them in the comments. Whatever stirred in you during this time, name it if you can. Someone else sitting in their own silence may need to read exactly what you write. If this space has felt like somewhere you want to return to, subscribing simply means you'll find your way back more easily. And for those who feel drawn to something a little closer, a little more sustained, membership is a quiet way of saying, I want to stay near this. Whatever you choose, I am grateful you were here, grateful you stayed, grateful you let this reach whatever part of you it reached. You came into this carrying something, and I hope you leave it feeling, even just slightly, less alone in it. Not because the weight has disappeared, but because you know now, more than you did at the beginning, that the weight was never invisible. It was seen. It has always been seen. And you, exactly as you are, have always been held.